What are
Okay.
you going to do with a fossil footprint that steps into a footprint of a dimorphodon? This is the story of the Willett Track on the revolution against evolution. Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host Rich Gear here as well. And Doug, this is really kind of interview number two, I guess, that we did with Carl Baugh back in the day. And the Willett Track is interesting because the dimorphodon is actually a flying reptile. And for those who are unfamiliar, flying anything that flies or swims is not considered a dinosaur for those laymen, but it is considered in the evolutionary time thing a prehistoric reptile. We don't believe it's prehistoric, but we do believe it was a dimorphodon. And it's basically the name is given because it has, I guess, two different types of teeth in its jaws, for its front, its face. But
The Paluxy River is a area in Texas where the Creation Evidence Museum is, and there's a number of different trails of human footprints that are found alongside dinosaur footprints. And right behind me in my background, I have a picture of the area where the Willett Track was taken out. There was you can see behind me a little square area where the track was cut out of the limestone. And leading up to this spot is a series of footprints that you and I walked in and looked at, and along with our friend Jody Chakravarty. This is in Dinosaur Valley State Park in Texas, and it's a fairly easy place to go and find the human tracks, but very nearby are dinosaur footprints. So this is a conundrum for those who believe in evolution, because to find human tracks along with those of dinosaurs is a little bit contradictory to their theory. Now, this
yeah,
is
you eliminate millions of years of time that evolutionists need because no one has ever seen evolution happen. All right.
right.
So they need that time because no one could ever be alive to see an evolutionary process happen. So yeah, that's
And
the whole
so,
problem.
in this video interview, there is a explanation of carved tracks. And there was
Ah,
one carved track that he has in his collection, and he talks a little bit about that.
the
In
differences between real tracks and carved tracks is
you know,
pretty obvious.
so
Yeah.
this is a good exercise in whether or not this track is genuine or fake, and that's in order to answer the claims that they have about these tracks.
Yep.
In the mid 1950s, Mr. O.W. Willett of the Stephenville area came to Glen Rose to fish in the Paluxy River. Apparently the fish were not biting, and it was shortly after a spring flood or early summer flood had ripped up a ledge of limestone. So he began to look in the river near what's called the Blue Hole. It's a deep hole. There was a ledge that is exposed until this very day. On that ledge, he found a trail of human footprints among a number of dinosaur footprints. That's before the Dinosaur Valley State Park had been chartered. So working in the river, the bed of the river, ledges of the river, was fair game to whoever wanted to take tracks or fossils. And we have, of course, pelecypods and crustaceans by the tens of thousands available in this immediate area. So O.W. Willett saw this track in a trail. Some of the remnants, after all of these decades, some of the remnants of the trail of human footprints still remain. Some of the toe prints still remain in other tracks, but in general they're obliterated because of the carbonic acid that actually leaches into and destroys the footprints during times of moisture. But Mr. O.W. Willett went to his pickup or car, and he got a chisel. One side was already fractured. He didn't have to carve, so he cut with a chisel through this area, and the marks are here, all the way through here and around the front of the print, but the fracture, natural fracture of the rock, had already exposed this immediate area or made this available for him to take the track out. He cut it out, took it home, and they kept it around the house for decades. Within the last few months, we were apprised of its existence, and we've been able to not only determine its authenticity by spiral CAT scans, but we've been able to determine specifically where it came from, and we've been able to match the elemental constituency of this rock with the ledge rock. It came from the ledge in what is now the Dinosaur Valley State Park. The trail of 12-inch footprints, remnants of that trail can be seen to this very day.
Okay, Rich, if you take a look here, here's a human track.
Where do you see that? Oh, right here?
Right here. It looks
Why don't you put your finger right down? Why don't you put your finger right down where it is?
Okay.
There we go. That's some human
It's
track.
got some, and then right here is another one that's got showing a couple of toes.
Let's go a little closer here. Hang on. Let me get a little closer. Oh, I guess I'm close. Oh, there we go. There we are.
And then we have another one here showing toes.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then it was right in this area over here where the Willett Track was taken out.
All right, and that's a really good, well-preserved track now,
Yes.
right?
And so,
And of course, that's the advantage. These tracks, Doug, wear out really
they
fast
do. And so,
when they're exposed.
Willett took out the best one. There's actually some additional tracks here, we think.
Yep, they get really. Yeah, you can tell they're worn.
And we actually have some dino tracks around here. This may be
All right, hang on,
dino
Doug.
track here. There's a dino track here.
Where's one? Let's point it out.
Right here.
Okay.
It's full of mud.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yep.
Okay, there's one right here. And then this one, it shows a couple of toes. There's another one over here.
This one right here, Doug. Isn't there one right here?
Yeah, this is a.
This one right here.
Yeah, this may be another one that's poorly defined.
Yeah.
This is a left, and this is a right.
Yeah.
This is a left over here with a big toe. And then
Yeah.
the Willett Track that we saw yesterday was taken out somewhere around in here.
Right in this area right here. Yep. And that's a very well preserved track. Okay, this is the one, Doug, you think might be a left track or a right track? Would you say a left track? Put your foot in there and see.
Yeah, I think it's like this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Now, let's examine the track. We have the heel, calcaneus, and cuboid area. We have the medial section of the longitudinal arch, including the ball of the foot. We have the great toe, the second toe, and as is consistent with human anatomy, the second toe is the most sensitive of all the toes, feeding more information neurologically to the brain than any other of the toes. And so, consequently, it dips at the point, and this dip is quite pronounced compared to the adjacent tracks. And then we have the third, fourth, and little toe. This point is quite distinctive compared to the points of the other toes. But then notice the lateral section of the longitudinal arch. There is a bulge completely consistent and uniquely consistent with a human anatomy. If you look at your foot, the outside of the foot is rather straight until you put pressure on it, and then there is a bulge. This is the lateral section of the longitudinal arch. But what is most interesting here is that the man stepped on another track. Here we have the hallux heel spur area, dug in quite well, of a dimorphodon, which had a very distinctive hallux spur heel area, but a pliable force section to his print. It's pronounced here and rather pliable here. Why? Dimorphodon was a pterodactyl that could both walk and fly, and his foot was quite pliable in order for him to retract it during flight, but the hallux is quite distinctive. So here we have the little dinosaur creature, or pterodactyl, cousin to the dinosaurs, stepping first. Then the man stepped on his track. We have taken this for spiral CAT scan at 2 excellent laboratories, and it was determined that the compression was under both tracks, the little dinosaur-type creature or pterodactyl creature cousin to the dinosaurs. That's quite distinctive that the compression is there, but the compression of the human footprint is even more distinctive. Around the toes, ahead of the toes, under the print, and the weight distribution and forward locomotion. I'd like to explain that footprints can be fabricated. It takes some expertise to do it, but footprints can be fabricated. However, the compression density under the tracks, around the tracks, and ahead of the tracks, consequent to forward locomotion, cannot be fabricated. So this print is absolutely genuine. What it demonstrates is man and dinosaur lived contemporaneously, consistent with Job chapter 40, verses 15 through 23, where God stated to Job, "Behold, now Behemoth, the dinosaur and his relatives, which I made with thee." And that is in complete contradiction to the evolutionary scenario, because these dinosaurs and their cousins, according to evolutionary theory, roamed these flats about 110 million years ago. But according to that theory, man did not arrive even in primitive form until approximately 2.5 million years ago. Well, those ages are simply assigned. What we have instead is clear evidence that dinosaur and man were here on the same day within minutes of each other, consistent with the biblical record under scientific scrutiny. Doug, do you have any questions or comments?
I was wondering about Mr. Willett himself. Was he, who was he, and did he find these tracks and hide them for many years, or did he actually show them to scientists, or try to make any money off of it, or anything of that sort?
That question is certainly germane. Mr. Willett, from all we can tell, was a common laborer. On a day off or a day when construction was not available, he simply went fishing. That's quite common. Intelligent people go fishing. He knew these tracks, the entire trail of tracks, were human in origin. This was apparently the best of the tracks and consistent in dimension with a profile of what's left of the tracks in the state park ledge. He simply cut it out, took it home. He didn't hide it, but to my knowledge, he did not discuss it with any academic. It was simply a possession of the family. Well, Mr. Willett died some years ago, and his family decided finally that they would sell the track. He made nothing from the track, but his family did sell it to the museum. But we then ran scientific analysis on it. And what we had to give the family certainly was worth every cent. But that was all a private arrangement with the...
Now, one of the issues that we have to resolve is, were these tracks genuine or were they carved? And it's quite possible that, and we wanted to make sure that this is not the case. And so Carl Baugh talks about, in this video, about his experience with the Willett Track and how he took special pains to find out if this is a genuine track or if it's a fake. A track that was deliberately faked was called the Adams Moor print, and this was carved in the 1930s. And Mr. Adams was trying to earn a living, and one of the things that he did was dig out some of the tracks that were found in the Paluxy Riverbed. And one of the and some paleontologists were quite interested in these, and so he decided to try carving a few of these, and he was actually very successful at doing so. But Dr. Baugh points out in this video that there are certain characteristics of this print that identify it as a fake. And because of that, it completes the mystery of how you can tell a genuine track from a fake track.
This is the famous track that in the 1930s created a controversy. And recently, its rediscovery solved a mystery. This is the track that was fabricated by George Adams in the mid-1930s during the Depression days in Glen Rose, Texas. It was hidden for a number of years and then left to the elements near a cellar of the late George Adams, and recently discovered by Dennis Moore, Pastor Dennis Moore, who had permission from the Adams family to check the old homestead. The home was being torn down. So we call this the Adams Moore print, technically. It was fabricated by George Adams, the brother to the famous Ernest Talbot Bull Adams, who was an eccentric genius. He's the only man ever, to our knowledge, to have memorized the entire book of logarithms. He said he simply got tired of looking them up, so he memorized the entire book. He was a Rhodes Scholar and with graduate degrees from Oxford. But he was a member of the local community, was born in the area and grew up here. He was a very famous and very strong man, an eccentric genius, an attorney, and an archaeologist, anthropologist, and paleontologist. His brother, George Adams, noted that Ernest Talbot Bull Adams had discovered some dinosaur footprints and a trail of human footprints in the Paluxy River. Well, digging those out was very difficult. So George Adams simply fabricated 6 or 8 dinosaur footprints and 2 or 3 human footprints. I spoke directly with the man who assisted him, his son-in-law, who assisted him in carving the tracks, spoke directly with his daughter, who knew all the details. Now, footprints can be fabricated. However, the underlying structure, that is the compression density, and the density that is created by the forward locomotion cannot be fabricated. This track, after its discovery, was placed in laboratory analysis. We had spiral CAT scans run, and they demonstrate conclusively that we have no compression density under the track or around the track, only the normal compression of a solidified layer. So let's examine this track. As we examine it, we can see the normal context of the surface, which has been unaffected. But we see what we call pockmarks, the indentations around the track itself in 2 or 3 areas near the track one here slightly, one there more pronounced, in the track, under the track, and around the track in the toes, but the normal surface of the rock is left intact without the pockmarks. How do we explain this? George Adams used a cold chisel. That is a chisel with a taper but a flat point. With that, he was able to cut, as we see in this area, cut into the rock. He was able to cut into the rock. He was able to fabricate the indenture, fabricate the footprint, and he did quite an expert job on this. He did not know certain features in that the tip of the second toe dips deeper because it's the most sensitive. He did not know these things. But in general, he did an excellent job fabricating the track. As he used the cold chisel to break the rock, the surface material when he first carved the track was rather smooth, like the rest of this area. However, the method that he used fractured the material under the surface. So in the weathering of long decades since the mid-1930s, the material that was fractured has weathered out, and thus we have the pockmarks showing where he actually did the carving. He added muriatic acid, coffee grounds with a stain, and he was able to generate the great toe, second, third, fourth, and little toe, quite dominant, more dominant than we would normally have the footprint, but he was a heavy, strong man, so maybe he used his own foot as a model. So here we have the controversy generated by carving a footprint. This track was so good that even a Smithsonian scholar came to the area wanting to see it. Well, he thought it would probably be found out, so he buried the track. Later, dug it up. It was kept by the family, and then it was kept in the area near the cellar, the storm cellar, at the back of the house, because after a while the controversy was generated, and he didn't have much to say about it. He passed on. Now his children have passed on, the Akins family, son-in-law that I knew quite well, and they were very favorable toward creation. And now this tract has been rediscovered, and we're able to solve a mystery. How do we solve the mystery? The mystery is solved in that tracks can be fabricated. There's no question about that. But compression density under the track and around the track and ahead of the track in forward locomotion cannot be fabricated. We've had spiral CAT scans run in laboratory analysis, and the compression density is not found around or under this footprint. This is the original fabricated Adams/Moore footprint. One reason we know the specific method that George Adams used has to do with this series of lines right here. A cold chisel is forged steel, but the point of it is blunt. It tapers, but it is blunt. It's a little more narrow than this. And we can see in this area where he used the cold chisel, went down. He was quite good at what he did. Went down again and again. He also did the same in this area. We can see the marks of the cold chisel coming like this. He was quite good. And of course, when the track was complete, this was the fragmented area that later, that's a deep fragmented area, that later weathered out. It was probably rather smooth when he finished the fabrication of his track.
I have a question. My question is are these the only known carved tracks that you were found or known of that were carved, or were there others?
These were the famous controversial carved tracks. So other experiments were run. In fact, we have found at least one additional footprint that we know was carved. We do not know who carved it, It was carved at a distance and brought to us, carved in another county. And it appeared to be carved. It was just slightly stylized. And then we had the spiral CAT scans run, and again, there were no compression lines, no density factors under it. But this helped us to set a basic set of parameters whereby we could determine what's genuine. This is the one that basically it was set. Then a friend of the museum ran some experiments to see how well he could do in carving a print. And he did a pretty good job. But again, the compression density factors are not in place under it. So this is a controlled study determining how they do it. One of our documentarians used some muriatic acid to see how well he could cut into the material. He had to take an abrasive instrument in order to cut into the material, then use the muriatic acid. But again, the compression density was not shown underneath. But George Adams was the man who carved 2 or 3 of these, and until the recent studies, we've only been able to determine 1, perhaps 2, that were done at a distance, but they now have come into our possession so we could analyze them.
Now, evolutionists have said that the Burdick tract is a carved tract. What do you say about that?
Fortunately, once we determined that a fabricated tract does not have the compression density, then we had a basic parameter compared with the Delk and Willett footprints, who do show the compression density. We then subjected the Burdick footprint to the same scrutiny, and we did find the compression density under and around the Burdick footprint. It is genuine.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ball. That's great. That sort of confirms exactly what we've been saying for many years.
Yes. And we have it scientifically confirmed now, and a methodology to determine what is fabricated and what is genuine.
Unfortunately, the fabricated tracks have a tendency to be used and to discount the whole idea that these tracks are genuine, and so that makes it a real problem for us, because though we have evidence and scientific evidence that prove it to be genuine, the fact that there was some fabrication gives them an excuse.
Yes, it does. And they use that excuse rather readily.
We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.